Welcome to Future Cities Africa. Edwin Diender is Chief Digital Transformation Officer for the Enterprise Business Group at Huawei Technologies. Edwin, welcome. Give us a brief introduction on your background and current work.
Thank you, Dan. It's much appreciated to have me on your show. Well, I am Edwin, and thanks for the introduction. I joined this great company in the local office in the Netherlands, where at that time, not only the Netherlands office for Huawei Technologies, but also the regional office for Huawei West Europe was positioned. And I'm from the Netherlands. And I was hired to help set up industry solution sales practices for the West European region, which I did. I became a spokesperson to global analyst organization and international media in course of 2013 on Huawei's forward-looking statements and strategy and financial results. And in 2014, I was asked if I would like to join our team in head office, which is in Shenzhen, where I am right now. Because I did. In January 2015, I moved to Shenzhen and I joined the Unified Communication and Collaboration product line as their Chief Technology Officer. And because of all the products that sits in the family of products of this department, of this product line, some folks in the organization said, well, maybe it would be better if we go from outside in rather than inside out. So instead of being in the heart of development, very close to R&D and innovation, I'm still close to innovation, but not in the heart of the organization when it comes to sitting on top of the research and development teams. I moved to become the vice president for government and public sector business unit, which at that time was the largest business unit and business line in Huawei Enterprise. And I still work for that team, bringing to market solutions that we label smart. Smart education, smart healthcare, smart transportation, safe, smart city. We don't say smart government, but we do have an obvious, but we do have an e-government platform that allows the digitalization of government services and public services to be provisioned via the mobile broadband and digital networks worldwide towards those governments that can use that and bring that forward. Since last year, January, I became the Chief Digital Transformation Officer in Huawei Enterprise, and I help our customers and our partners with their digital journey.
So before we get into the smart elements, let's talk about digital transformation. What are the key steps to successful digital transformation and what are the latest trends?
So digital transformation in itself is giving a direction, if you like. It supports perhaps, or it's like a leadway or a stepping stone, if you like, for example, for a government or a ministerial department, but also for private sector and private companies or public or nonprofit sector. So basically any type of organization that is on the verge of moving into a next stage and it has, for example, a development calendar or agenda, and for example, or most of the time, a digital calendar or a digital agenda. So it gives direction, it gives structure, and um, it brings an opportunity to the table that allows such a digital journey to end up or move higher up the value chain in a much shorter time for two reasons. The first reason is that digital is the new economy and physical is the old economy. In the old economy, we work with projects. Projects have a budget. A budget is clear, a budget is defined, and a project also has a clear beginning and a clear ending. So what it does is it creates a pathway and then there is a clear demarcation point because either that's where the budget stops, no matter whether there's a bunch of project behind it, or project and budget and timeline are just fixed. If we do this on a digital journey, which is what digital transformation is, a digital journey that follows that process from the physical economy, so to speak, goes from a project by project by project basis. You move forward in a stop and go motion. That's not a very smooth transition and certainly not a smooth journey. So the second part of the digital journey, or what digital transformation is about, is to create more of a travel guide kind of principle and applies that principle to programs and initiatives that, for example, allows a city or a nation or a university campus or any other form of business to move higher up the value chain in a much shorter time. And the third part that then goes along with it is what to do and what to do first. For example, I can imagine that would be a question. One of the things that needs to be done is for a bunch of folks, a bunch of people, a bunch of bright ideas, stakeholders, if you like, sit together at a table and come to a mutual understanding. This mutual understanding is needed the moment you're moving forward, putting this down on paper, signing it off, and agree to move forward as such in a staged approach, and where each program and each initiative is lined up, for which not so much budget, but funding and financing is allocated or to be found, which is another initiative. Find funding and financing for the initiative to, I don't know, an area of Cape Town or the University of Stellenbosch to create a digital environment for online learning, online teaching, remote education, and what have you, or a medical university for that matter, or a hospital, or any other organization that embarks on this process. If that makes a bit of sense, if I put it like that.
So the strategy is incredibly important, but what are some of the challenges to getting to that strategy and implementing that strategy?
Well, the biggest challenges, of course, are systems and services that already are in place. What I find in my daily practice when supporting our customers and partners in their digital journey is that things that are blocking in a certain way, or things that are slowing things down, do not necessarily, or actually almost never, relate to technology itself. So it's not technology holding things back. It's uh, silos, information silos, procedures, and what have you. In earlier and previous interviews and sessions similar to this, related to the sub-Saharan um, part of Africa, but also to South Africa, very specific, and folks can find that if they want to Google my name, for example, and search for me in South Africa or Joe Berg or what have you. You will find some publications where I'm stating that at that time, this is 2018, 2017 timeframe-ish. If you look at what I'm saying then, and taken from that time point then, I'm actually making a very strong point for the sub-Saharan African region by telling them that they are at the verge of accelerating and moving higher up that value chain faster than any other organization or nation worldwide, simply because the idea is the same. The starting point of a country in Europe or any region in the sub-Saharan African region or the whole African continent is the same. It's a starting point. But Europe, for example, is so overregulated that the paper process, the physical analog paper process that is needed to sign off on a piece of paper with a particular pen that is ink, so there's no digital signage at all. And it can only be done on Monday morning because the city councillor, for example, for the rest of the week is basically unavailable, is blocking progress more than technology does. And you can see this. There is a lot of initiatives uh, all out and throughout Africa, including the sub-Saharan part of it. And yes, also in South Africa, specifically in different areas, different domains, where you can see that their step forward, similar to any other region in the world, is bringing them currently 2-3 years later than when I said this, higher up the value chain than any other country in the world.
And even if we want to fast track digital transformation, how can that be done? What are some of the steps that we need to take now, even in the situation that we are in?
Well, I guess the best way of looking at this is from a hierarchy of needs, if you like. In any form of initiative or in any form of a journey, there is a framework, or there is a methodology that creates a starting point, that creates the mechanisms to move forward, and so on and so forth. But alongside of that, or maybe woven into that and embedded within that, and from within, uh, branching out and leveraging that, is a hierarchy of needs. Just like we all understand this pyramid shape of Maslow, his hierarchy of needs. Uh, Intelligent cities also have a hierarchy of needs. The first one, of course, and the lowest level, sits with an infrastructure. An infrastructure or a network has to be in place. If that's not in place, accelerate on that. This is a nationwide whatever. A mobile broadband network built on 5G can. The existing infrastructure that's there but not fully leveraged, branch off of that. The second step would be on safety and security, on any form and any level that you can imagine. Because the moment we move forward in further digitization, digitalization, and the next step of it, which is the full-fledged digital transformation of all and everything, because these are the three stages of what the digital journey usually passes round from. The safety and security part becomes forgotten, taken for granted, perhaps, or not even there. So, first layer in the hierarchy of needs, a pyramid of 4 layers. First layer, digital infrastructure. Second layer, safety and security. Third layer, industry enablement. Whenever that nationwide broadband infrastructure is available, it is adding appliances. It is applying it to education, for healthcare, for remote and rural areas, for inclusion, digital inclusion, giving digital identities, for example, and so on and so forth. And the tip of this pyramid, of course, sits with the brain and the nervous system, a system that functions, or an operations center for national operations or city operations or network operations, if you like, or educational operations, you name it. The tip of this pyramid, of this hierarchy of needs for connected and intelligent cities, or maybe even connected and intelligent nations. The tip is the brain. It's the intelligent operations center, which is the brain and the nervous system that combines it all.
I love that explanation. I would actually argue that we can include in the bottom layer not only digital infrastructure, but even some physical infrastructure. If I
Oh,
take
clearly.
South Africa as an example at the moment, we've got load shedding again. We couldn't have our previous discussion because of load shedding. And with my conversation with Steve Apps, he actually mentioned that you cannot have smart cities without consistent energy production.
He's very right. If you look about if you look at what the digital journey for digital transformation is about, you could think of this as a two-track, parallel track kind of thing. The first one, of course, so what drives the digital journey sits with services transition. But the second one, and Steve is very right on that one, is energy transition. For sure. Yeah, for sure.
So, on the topic of smart cities, what is Huawei's vision of what a smart city should look like? How is it defined and how will you implement it?
Well, the second one is actually a very simple one. We don't implement smart cities. We are only sharing knowledge, create thought leadership and awareness around the principle of it. Whatever the principle is, we can share knowledge from investments and innovations that we've done in specific domains that are picked up by integrators and managed service partners and deployers and construction organizations, for example, that are putting it in place and using it as different building blocks in parallel to the hierarchy of need, if you like. Such a pyramid shape or such a triangular shape, if we got four of them, 1, 2, 3, and 4, creates a square. A square combines with 6 sides a cube, and now we have 6 hierarchy of needs, each representing 6 separate sides of a cube, maybe Rubik's cube, which is another analogy that I actually made. So what is a smart city to me? A smart city to me is not existing, because if you look at the definition of smart in any dictionary, you will agree with me that if you put it on a city, it doesn't match. So I'm thinking more of the line of connected cities, intelligent connected or connected intelligence kind of cities, where this hierarchy of needs or this cube is built with building blocks. Each building block is connected to a wireframe because that's the principle of a Rubik's cube. Erno Rubik in 1974 wanted to create, Hungarian mathematician, he wanted to create a structure where pieces can move independently without making that structure break or fall apart. And an example or the visualization of that is his Rubik's cube. If you think about all these different pieces, then for example, the core or centerpieces of such a cube could represent the brain and the nervous system of such a smart city. As I mentioned before, the cornerstones of such a cube could be the pieces that then represent a safe city. Safe city is the cornerstone of a smart city foundation, if you like. Internet of Things is the foundation of smart cities, and the support pieces or the edge pieces of that same cube is another example of a building block that sits in this same wireframe that allows all these different and independent pieces or separate pieces to move independently without making the structure fall apart, could represent an ecosystem. So what then is a smart city? A smart city is not a smart city. It's a connected city. It's an intelligent city. And what makes it smart or what makes it intelligent? Its linkage to other cities. So creating a network or a grid, a nationwide infrastructure of connected cities where services are shared, where building blocks are in place that are connected to each other via this wireframe that allows these pieces with their independencies to move independently without breaking that structure. I always try to convert it in such a way if someone says, so, okay, understand, good. A lot of lingo, nicely said. But now to the point, what is it really? So let's say smart city. A smart city to me is a platform that is able to link programs and initiatives that allows an area of a city or the whole city to move higher up the value chain in a much shorter time. And this platform that I talk about, of course, is a lot of technology. This platform, of course, is technicalities. It is systems and services. But what it also is the principle of a platform. Just like the Chamber of Commerce, which is a very abstract institution, is also a platform for entrepreneurs, incubators, startups and scale ups, VAT registration, company corporate registration, systems and services, a platform.
A lot of people are asked the question to also mention that you cannot have smart, so they call it smarter. You can have a
Oh yeah,
smarter city by having that element improved and that element improved, etc.
very much. And if I may add on that point,
Yeah.
I often use, I'm not sure if it's a meme or a paraphrase, but I often say the following already for a long, long time. Technology should be able to help us do better what we already do best. So if technology is not able to do that, then as nice as it looks or as interesting as it might seem, it's probably not that good technology. Put it in a museum of the future, but it's not because it's not allowing us to do better what we already do best. I think that this taps into what your audience is also reflecting on and echoing. It is for optimization. It is to improve livelihood, to create a safer and sound environment, to be more efficient in daily operations of, for a city manager, city management, for the lighting industry, for a better distribution and knowledge of their electricity grid or what have you, for educational infrastructures or educational organizations or healthcare institutions or transportation organizations, road maintenance, you name it. Efficiency, do better what we already do best.
Do you think the definition of a smart city is different for Africa than it is for some of the developed countries?
Let me take it very blunt and very up front and not so much personal then, but I think the background of that particular question or the basis of that particular question comes also from an assumption or a point of view that there are differences in different worlds. A long time ago when I was younger, growing up, I never understood why we had a first, a second, and a third world way of defining things or cornering or grouping things. As I grew up and as I found out later, we want to decentivize these words and we're using developed economies and under or not developed economies. To be very honest, and again, to be very blunt, I really do not think that there is a difference, any difference, between someone living in Africa or someone living in Europe, someone living in Canada, someone living in Mexico City, or there is no difference between how and where people live and their needs. If that is the case, and I truly believe that that is the case, then that there is also no difference in what technology is able to provide. The difference sits with what is the system around it that is able to provision it. What is the mechanism for it that is able to provide it or provision that? What is the technology available today that already can do 80, 90, or maybe even 99% of that already? And if it's not there, how fast can we get it in order to move us and progress for us? I think that's what we need to have a talk about. And then again, if we look at Africa or any other country or nation in the world, to put technology in place, I think there are many countries on the African continent that are in the top 3 of the top 10 of mobile penetration. So clearly there is mobile infrastructure, even in these areas where, and I've been to them, and not only in Africa actually, but I've also been to areas in Europe and other areas where you take a bus or a piece of transportation, and because the budget stopped, it's the end of an infrastructure. The road physically stops. And then if you move on, so you put your backpack on, you walk through wilderness or what have you, 5 or 6 or 8 kilometers further is a community of 1,000, 2,000, 20,000, 30,000 people living, having their life, working, having 2 or 3 mobile phones. What is not there is an application that can run on that phone and that says, you're a student, you're a kid, you just broke your leg, or it's raining. That's why you're not able to run this 5 kilometer in the morning to catch the school bus, and you're running back. That's 10 kilometers, 5 kilometers in, 5 kilometers out, and you're home, and your dad is going to tell you, what the hell are you doing home? Well, sorry, Dad, but it was raining. I slipped. I kind of stumbled my way to the bus stop and I missed it. So now I'm back. A learning management platform embedded within this mobile broadband infrastructure that's already there is a very good example of how, for example, in Africa, in this particular case, such an application can roll out immediately if the Ministry of Education says this is what we're going to do. And if there's a technology provider that says, this is what we're going to help you with, if there's an integrator that says, we're going to do it more nicely, we're going to do this gradually for each and everyone. And in the same time, we're going to link this educational infrastructure nationwide into rural areas to a medical university. So we can add on top of that the advancement of telehealth, telemedicine, mobile health, and we're going to use drones or what have you for, medicine deliveries and you name it. You get the idea, right? Has nothing to do with developed or underdeveloped. It has everything to do with ability a drive, a person that says, this is my ambition. You did not only elected me as your, I don't know, president or mayor or city councilor, you specifically elected me for this. This is what I will do for this nation.
Are there some real world smart cities examples that stand out to you in terms of the strategies they've used, how public and private sector collaborated, how they were funded?
A lot, yes, a lot. And I don't think it's fair for me to say Google it and you will find it, because that would be the easy way out. But it is the easy way out. But it's also the most complete way out. It will show you that everywhere along the line, anywhere all over the world, are initiatives being lined up. All governments worldwide, all nonprofit boards worldwide, any and every organization worldwide has some form of a long-term or mid-term digital kind of an agenda. Maybe they struggle on how to put things in place. Maybe they struggle on what to do and what to do first. But it is in their it is in their management summary. It is in their annual statements. It is in their what have you. Some countries, some nations, some organizations, some nonprofit boards, some companies are a little further and a little farther ahead of the game than others. But all of them are embarking on digital journeys. Um, are there organizations that are further ahead of the game? Yes, but not all of them in the same way. For example, if you look at Singapore, Singapore is a very strong example of different projects regarding digital transformation. It's not a program, if you like, because they're different things. They're by themselves on their own. There is a thin line between them. There is a bit of a information sharing between them, but basically it's a whole bunch of very interesting and smart projects, things, and they work for what Singapore is. For Tokyo, that doesn't work. That means Tokyo is also a smart city or an intelligent city, but they line it up a little better, and they go along with the flow, so to speak. Same for Korea. If you look at China, China is I was going to say an organization, but is a very organized country when it comes to a nationwide guidance, idea, uh, implementation of applying for funding and financing, government support, uh, not only enforcing but also coordinating public-private initiatives and bringing that forward nationwide, and the integration of those. A couple of other countries, Russia, very high up the value chain, but predominantly from Moscow. So yes, it's very smart, but it's not very intelligent, if you like to put it like that, because from a smart nation, Moscow is the one that drives it, and the rest is a little left behind, so to speak. And it's competition in between, which is very understandable if you look at where it comes from. But from a nationwide initiative, a good program, good implementation, and Moscow benefits from that, mostly and predominantly. Other countries, South Africa, Rustenburg, Stellenbosch University, or the area where Stellenbosch University is part of, which is Stellenbosch area, has a lot of initiatives and ideas. I think recently they were granted a couple of funding initiatives for things like public transportation, expanding on a tech park around the University of Stellenbosch, tourism kind of component. So learning and development, health and well-being combined with learning residing. The value sits within the economical development as well as the social, social and economical sustainability of the investment itself. And I think Stellenbosch, but also Cape Town in a certain way, Joburg for some public services, but not for all, would help. So yeah, Port Elizabeth, Durban, for sure.
What is the current global state of 5G and artificial intelligence, and where do you see it heading over the next, say, 5 years?
5G is mature. It's the fifth generation, 5G, the fifth generation of mobile infrastructures and mobile networks. It already shows its value in so many different industries, even the industries that are at the verge of implementing it. The different layers that the fifth generation of mobile broadband connectivity provides to blend connectivity. For example, the Internet of Things, where narrowband IoT, it's getting a bit technical like this, but nevertheless, where narrowband IoT sits, where Zigbee sits, where RFID tagging sits for valuable assets and asset management for that in buildings and creating smart buildings, are usually separate networks, but the fifth generation of mobile infrastructures can blend it. So that means you don't need different access points. You don't need different radio access networks. You don't need different components for transmission and receiving, because these capabilities are features of the connectivity layer, and not the connectivity layer itself is the feature. If that makes sense, right? So you don't need a separate access point that can only speak sensor technology, and another access point wireless that speaks Wi-Fi for you and me in my in our home environment or office environment, and then somewhere else it speaks another language, and Bluetooth if it needs for this, and Zigbee. Well, Zigbee, Bluetooth, RFID are communication layers, and these layers come with capabilities embedded within a single unit that has different, aggregation levels. That's where fifth generation of mobile infrastructure sits. AI sits where it comes to a better managing of all that, a blending of all these services, and helping the IT management team, systems administrators, and computing science engineers and what have you, to help them do better what they already do best, which is manage and maintain all these different pieces of components and networks that become more complex, and that become wider and wider and wider deployed, and more difficult to reach, but still needing to be maintained at the 24/7 365 all day round capability or uptime. For example, today in the pandemic, where areas of a city, for example, are now being burdened by the fact that people work from home, when this mobile network that needs to cover that was not designed for that, right? The mass capacity and the burden of carrying all these people logging on were were not at the residential area level or gated communities area or city malls. That was at tech parks and the Fortune 500 companies and what have you. But now it's not. People work from home. Students learn from home. Teachers teach from home. Your kitchen Wi-Fi for a teacher is fine, but if your kids are also home and they're learning, your kitchen Wi-Fi is not even designed for that. So how to embed that? How to arrange it? You need to change your kitchen Wi-Fi. Well, sometimes you don't. With the current standard of AI and with the current standard of the fifth generation of mobile infrastructures, that becomes easier to manage, easier to maintain, and easier to create different workloads and partitions of the network where higher capacity of availability needs to be pre-programmed or pre-configured or redistributed, if that makes a bit of sense. The other side of the spectrum is also the same, where devices like this are logging on to these mobile infrastructures. An application, for example, that we've developed together with other organizations is for children who are deaf. So how do you teach a deaf child at home if it's not able to go to school where a teacher speaks freaking sign language and you don't, or you need to learn it as well? But how do you do that? Well, there is an application called StorySign, which is co-developed with us and with a bunch of other folks, and you can get it from any app store. You can download it on your regular smartphone. It speaks to the lens and the camera of your phone, and it takes pictures from this camera. So it looks in real time to the pages. So this is the page, has text. The camera of your phone looks at that page, translates the text of that page into a little avatar in the corner of the screen that speaks sign language, and the other way around. So you can point this as your kid, at your kid who speaks sign language, and for you, it then pops up as an avatar that speaks that speaks in a regular voice. And when you speak to it, it translates it to sign language for this avatar. If we take a bigger version of this, if we take a bigger version of this and we put this in regular video conferencing meeting rooms, for example, a service that you and I are using right now. I am here in Shenzhen, you're in South Africa. We're using a video sharing, video chat, video messaging, video collaboration, video meeting platform. Imagine this is a feature that sits within. We already have a feature that does something with subtitling, right? Closed captioning. Many of these applications have it. You can turn it on, and what it does, it picks up my voice and gives a little subtitle, but it can also be done the other way around. I can speak Dutch, translates into English for you. If you are French, or if you're German, or if you're speaking any other language, any of the South African languages or African languages, it can pick that up. It can translate that into English or Dutch or French, whatever language I prefer. And also as such, it comes out. So social inclusion, digital inclusion, leaving no one behind, bridging a digital gap are core examples of where AI are driving things forward, and where the fifth generation of mobile networks makes it easier to integrate all that and blend all that in a secure and safe manner.
How do you see cities change over the next 5 years?
That is a very interesting question. There are reports out there that actually say that that more and more people eventually will live in urbanized areas. Um, what that implies. So, for example, the World Economic Forum has reports on that, but also United Nations. If you read it, what it could imply, or what it actually does imply in that particular report, in those particular reports, is that apparently the thought process is that physically areas will be more developed, which means a rural area will develop eventually into an urbanized area. Cities physically will grow in a certain direction. I don't really think that's what we need. And I also don't think that's what it means. I think where we're ramping up for is that there will be digital twins of physical whatever, a digital twin of a city. So as a person living in a residential area, in the example that I mentioned earlier of the rural area, right? There's budget for an infrastructure to have a school bus drive. End of the budget is end of the physical highway. And now we need to run 5 or 6 miles before we reach our community, which is 20, 30,000 people still. To include them, we can give them a digital identity. With a digital identity, they have a digital residence. With a digital residency, they can get a bank account. With a bank account, they can also do something else. They can get an ID card. They can vote. They can get insurance for health and so on and so forth. That is the core important part of urbanization that I think, the digitalization of urban development. So what I mean by that is I don't think, of course, cities will expand and cities will grow physically, but I think the digital version of those cities will expand and grow faster and more high up. I think more and more people, after they've moved from certain, let's say, the countryside, and then work into a city or a city kind of way, um, in an apartment or a condominium or a house or what have you. I think when they're in the mid or at the end of their career, perhaps, they want to retire a little, so they move away, or they got a second house, or they sell everything, they retire, and they go to the countryside again. That means that I think more people will leave a city, but they will be in the digital version of that city. And that gives them additional services. Drones will deliver packages and what have you to a drone station. Medical packages, whatever you buy on eBay or Amazon will be dropped or delivered like that, or in a certain way. The whole backend infrastructure will be completely digitalized. Another thing that I see going on in cities is the green component, um, vertical farming, vertical forests, vertical parks on the top of a roof, that sort of thing, and that kind of idea. Um, the digitalization of backend information systems and services and processes. DHL and FedEx are very good examples of it. They still deliver physically a box with a package, or the package is a box or an envelope to your door. 10, 15 years ago, to receive it, you had to sign with an ink pen on a piece of paper that you're the one who received it. Or if this is for your neighbor, you receive it on behalf of your neighbor. And then in the evening, when the neighbor comes home, you knock the door and so on and so forth. Today, physically speaking, you still get the box, the cardboard box or whatever you ordered. But the way of approval is maybe your fingertip or a face scan, or it's your finger on a digital device that the mailman has. So the whole backend information system is so efficient, so digitalized, so unmanned almost when it comes to cars that goes back and forth. And the efficiency behind it is so digitalized. That is where also daily operations of city management, I think, will go. Definitely. So services will become more digitalized. Again, tapping into what I said before, technology that indeed helps us do better what we already do best.